Hey everybody, it's Shelly. I'm back. We're back from our excellent adventure to Ontario, Canada. And I'm working on wrapping my head around all that we saw and did in those 20 days we were on the road. I haven't even figured out how many miles we drove or how many times we set up and took down the tent or how many times Brett set up and took down the tent. I was doing all the driving, so I felt that was kind of fair. I know we had an Airbnb for just 4 of the 20 nights that we were out, and that was pretty clustered in the beginning of the trip since we had a sputtery start. We were delayed by traffic and birthday dinners, and then the check engine light came on in the rental car. I had to take that to be swapped out. That was crazy. But when we did take off, finally, I think it was on day 5, we ended up going really far north up to Cochrane like I had hoped. We entered the Arctic watershed, which is the point in North America where from that point north, all of the streams and rivers and everything else flow into the Arctic Ocean. We did get pretty far north and we saw all kinds of landscape. We were actually here in Pittsburgh, we're at 40 degrees latitude. And we got to 49 degrees latitude. So that's pretty far. We saw all kinds of different landscape. There were swamps and marshes and plains and mountains and dunes. And wow, there's a lot of water in Canada. We swam in the Arctic watershed in a mineral spring fed lake. It was pretty chilly, but it was really cool. Cool in the awesome kind of way. I did find Uper lights in Lake Superior. Actually, Brett found them. I brought the UV light and Brett brought his amazing eyeballs to be able to spot tiny little things, and he found some. We had to dig for them sometimes, but we found some really cool Uper lights. I'll get pictures up, I promise. And we had lots of amazing food and met some really nice Canadians. So all of that you have to look forward to in a future episode of our trip. But today we'll be listening to an interview I did before I left with Chris Kosin from GaiaScape Landscaping. Chris has a background in the medical field, but he's turned his need to nurture into nurturing nature and nurturing others with that connection to nature and creating community and everything else around those connections. He's a really cool dude, and I hope you enjoy our conversation. Well, hi, Chris. Welcome to With Bowl and Spoon. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us about what you do?
So my name is Chris Kosin. I am the owner and sole employee of GaiaScape Landscaping, which I mostly focus on ecological landscapes in the city of Pittsburgh and the region, actually, but also do a lot of edible gardening as well as permacultural gardening within those native and ecological landscapes. I kind of have two or three veins of clients that I have. So I either have like my corporate commercial business clients that either want like a low maintenance space at their business or like a rooftop garden because they want to entertain clients there or want something presentable, or like with AHN, I have food gardens with them. So they have the AHN Healthy Food Center program as well as the Healthy Food Center gardens. But then I also have residential clients that say, I'm sick of my lawn, convert it to ecological habitat, or convert it to something perennial, or quote low maintenance, or lower maintenance than mowing your yard every week, or multiple times a week, or never when we don't have any rain. And then the third type of clientele are people that reach out to me for food gardening, standard vegetable gardening, always organic or organic in ways. And also permacultural methods. So I did an installation or helped do an installation in Riverview Park as an adjunct to their Zenshine garden with a friend of mine, Kimberly Bracken, who I think you also know. We met at Phipps's Sustainable Landscaping. Phipps has a Sustainable Landscaping Symposium in spring, and she showed me her plans for the Zenshine garden, and we instantly kind of bonded and have yet to run out of things to talk about, and it's now August. So So we worked together on that to create a permacultural food forest there through her program with Giving Grove as part of her work with Tree Pittsburgh as well. So a whole bunch of stuff swirling around. Sometimes there's food inserted into my native plant gardens. Like I've had clients that are like, I'm sick of my lawn, turn a third of it into a vegetable garden or a food space, and then the other 2/3 of it be native landscapes or perennial landscapes. So that's a kind of good breadth of what I do with my clients. And everything in between, where people are like, how do I do containers? And I'm still teaching classes at FIPS. I'm still trying to teach with nonprofits, as well as like my Instagram platform to just answer people's questions that randomly message me or email me. But I love it. I've been teaching classes in Pittsburgh for over a decade and trying to teach people how to do things not the wrong way. I don't say the right way because there is no such thing, but just to tell them my mistakes.
The wrong thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. When did you start on your venture of doing ecological landscapes?
So I think it started a long time ago when me and my ex-partner had a couple gardens in Lawrenceville, and we were trying to tuck in flowers. We like to do cut flowers and bring them inside and cheer up the inside of our house at the time. And I didn't really like the idea of always having to do annuals. They're a pain in the butt to start from seed, and when you're trying to start them in a hallway garden or a hallway nursery in a Lawrenceville row house, there's not a whole lot of room to do that. So neighbors would give me these perennial plantings, and lo and behold, they were natives. I had no idea what the hell I was doing at the time. This was 2011 at the time, I think, 2011, 2012, and I was just absorbing freebie plants from online because I was a poor post-school nurse at the time.
That was a big time in Lawrenceville for the gardening movement happening there, and there were a lot of people that like knew their shit and were definitely recommending natives, and that's cool.
So I was just absorbing all these plants, and I was like, wow, the more flowering plants, the more perennials I have, the more insects I have, the less pest pressure I have. And lo and behold, you start going to conferences like PASA and getting involved with Grow Pittsburgh. And Tree Pittsburgh wasn't as much of a presence in my life then, but these ecological practices of integrative pest management, volunteering at FIPS, they do these methodologies with their indoor glass houses, and it's like, okay, well, you introduce the good bugs to eat the bad bugs, and you have kind of free pest management, but then you also have free pollination. I remember neighbors briefly got a hive when we lived at the top of 46th Street, or when I lived at the top of 46th Street, and we were like, oh my God, the honeybees are everywhere. And this was the first year we had the garden, or like the native bees the native insects hadn't set up shop yet. They hadn't had like the full year to really find the space. Like, oh my God, they're just everywhere. And we had a killer crop that year of our vegetables because they were just pollinating the hell out of them. Try not to focus too much on honeybees because they're, an exotic species. I try to focus more on the native pollinating insects. But at the time,
there are all kinds of bees. If you look at like a patch of black-eyed Susans, you'll see like teeny little green and little blue and like bigger weird looking bees.
But then you start planting weird native plants. Like when you plant a yarrow, you'll notice all these little tiny insects that'll populate on there. If you plant things like fennel and let it go to seed, or you plant things like valerian and try and harvest the roots, you'll notice all these little tiny insects that are engaging with these very tiny flowers. And you're like, wow, where did they all come from? And they're these parasitic wasps that are taking care of your aphid populations that are blowing up on your brassicas or your rapini, which is going to seed because Pittsburgh has about a week of spring where you can actually harvest it. So you notice all these little things when you insert all these different species, and things like bottle gentian are really specialized, and you're watching these weird little like tubular shaped flowers that have co-evolved with our native bumblebees, that the bumblebees are really the only species that are strong enough to kind of open them up, get in there and get the pollen, or other species will drill in through the side. That's just one that I can think of watching like early on and being like, oh my God, how the hell did this happen? Like, who gets into these actually closed flowers? And it's like, oh no, they're closed for a reason, because they have a specialized species.
So I've been doing gardening for quite a while, and I don't know all these details that you're talking about right now. This is great. I mean, you've taken it from you've gone a very scientific route and learned that bit of it. I mean, I know companion planting and that sort of stuff, but yeah, you've gone sciencey, so you have a science background though.
Yeah, I was going to say, I started out, I have a biology degree
here.
and chemistry degree. I was actually pre-farm when I went to school. Thank God I did not get into any school because I would be
you mean pre-pharmacy?
Yeah.
Not pre-farm?
Yeah, not
like
PHARM, not FARM.
Kind of ironic though, I love that twist.
So now
Maybe you can be pre-farm.
I was going to say, as a forager and an herbalist who has a whole drawer of tinctures and herbs and things that I forage and harvest and dry, I think I make my own pharmacy in a way. So yeah, so I have a strong science background, and I think that's probably what drove me to teach urban farming or urban gardening classes, because when you try something once and it doesn't work, you try something again and you try something again. This is gardening and farming and growing things in general. And when you buy the $1 bag of potting mix from a box store and you're like, why the hell didn't this grow? Well, because it didn't have any nutrition. And then somebody like Cavassini's is like, hey, I want to support you, like, here, let me drop this off. And like Katie was super supportive of like helping me start a garden in Lawrenceville early on. But then even growing in mushroom manure, I was like, okay, well, probably not the ideal thing. Now AgriCycle is like, we're so lucky to have a company like AgriCycle that is just like drop and go, and you can use it for a very long time without having to amend it because the compost is so perfect. But teaching people the dynamics of like, okay, here's what a $1 bag of potting mix is going to look like. Here's your tomatoes that are now 2 months old and they haven't done a damn thing. Here's the mushroom manure, and see how they're getting burned around the edge because they have too much salts. Here's the compost. Oh, and you can grow like this for 2 or 3 years without really having to amend it heavily. And showing people that and explaining to them like the science behind it, and also taking my nursing background into that too and explaining things on like a human level has been really rewarding. Like, it's really cool to tap into the community here and like engage people where they're at. Because some people, like, if you ever sit down or meet Burleton from Metal Mark, he's like way over my head. Like, he will just talk about all these specialized species, and like he's super focused on all these like co-evolved species, these niche species, and bringing back like species that aren't present in our area anymore but were really heavily here. It's just very idealistic of like how specialized you can get and one avenue, but he's way over my head.
Tell me about your nursing background and how you went from pre-farm to nursing.
I was gonna say, this is gonna be
because you completed that, right? You weren't pre-farm, you went into nursing instead, and then you came to farming, and now you are actually farm.
Yeah, this is going to be a hell of a story to edit, I think, for you, because it's convoluted for my life and I've lived it. So went pre-farm, completed a bio and chem degree from Pitt, figured out what the heck I wanted to do. I volunteered at the VA and FIPS as well. It just a wide avenue of like, what do I want to do next? And I said, well, there's nurses everywhere. I can go into this tract. I like helping people. I like the medical field. I've kind of always been drawn to it. I am a caregiver at heart. So I said, what the hell? I'll go to nursing. Duquesne has a 1-year BSN program for people that have a previous bachelor's degree, so I went for that. So I became a nurse in 2012. Worked at AGH. I was a floor nurse for a year in a post-surgical unit, and then did trauma ICU for 3 years. That was stressful as hell. It was a great community. It's hard for me to get rattled now. I feel like my heart rate is
I bet.
baseline.
I mean, that's a real heavy job.
Yeah. So very high stress.
You've seen a lot.
Yeah. Very high stress, very community, very team-oriented position, and you have to react. It's a very reactive type position. Left that, went over to West Penn on their cardiac ICU, and it was like life-changing. It was so much more relaxed. The institution over there was so much more community-oriented. Like the building just behaves as an organism. I think everybody's there to kind of help each other, much like the city of Pittsburgh feels like, for me at least.
Oh, that's really sweet.
Yeah, I think...
I mean, both for the city and also to know that West Penn is like that. That's
yeah,
nice.
I mean, I can't say anything bad about either institution. If you're sick and you need to be patched up, go to AGH. If you need a healthy place to heal, West Penn is a great community hospital, also a great surgical center, and the people that work there are out of this world. So I was there for a year on the cardiac ICU and got sucked into administration. So I was a manager of hospital operations for 3 years during the pandemic.
Whoa. Did you start during the pandemic?
I started in 2018.
Okay.
I think October 2018 is when I stepped into administration.
So you had a little time to sort of acclimate to that job before you had a global pandemic you were dealing with.
Yeah, which was interesting. But it was a really rewarding job. Like, when you're doing operations, you are representing everyone. So if you're not in your seat today, I represent you. If you're a manager of a unit, if you're the CEO of the hospital, if you're the COO, or if something breaks or there's a disaster, you're the person kind of meshing that all together. And it was awesome. Like, I had a great opportunity to meet everybody in that building and interact with so many different people, and it was fantastic. And it absolutely burned me the fuck out. Incredibly stressful, incredibly good social demeanor. You could not go off because you were the person holding it all together. And especially during the pandemic, there were a lot of people that were 10 years younger than me looking to me for, what do I do with this person? What do I do in this situation? I mean, I think I pushed the first COVID patient down the hallway at West Penn Hospital, and she was the first person in the area that was diagnosed. And I was like, okay,
Wow.
I'm just doing this because I'm a caregiver and this is what we do.
And we didn't know about masks at the time.
Oh, we did. I was
you guys
in
did?
full
Okay,
dark.
good,
I was
good,
in
good.
I was in the proper attire, like head to toe. She was a sweetheart. She
Maybe
was
I'll
super
ask
sweet.
that
We
away.
talked the whole way, and everything was fine.
That's a good ending. Then.
Yeah.
Excellent.
No,
don't mention her name.
but then I came home and took off all my clothes on the landing pad to my house because we didn't know what the hell we were dealing with, and I didn't want to bring it
Yeah.
home to my partner at the time. And,
Yeah.
And then by now, I mean, it's become what it is now. It's at the highest, maybe one of the highest rates it's ever been, and we're just living with it. So it's taken its turn. Anyway.
You're saying COVID is still out there. It's still.
Oh,
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
But it's not as deadly as it was. So
Exactly.
There's that. Phew. We made it through, in our lifetime, the first global pandemic. What's next?
So, anyway, and then I transitioned out of that job. I managed the recovery room for about a year before I left. It was a group of self-appointed boomers that had been in their positions for 20, 30 years. That you don't make nursing units like this anymore. Absolutely fantastic people. I loved working with them. I actually made them interview me because they were like, no, you can have the job. I'm like, no, I want to know what the hell I'm signing up for, especially from you people who I love working with, but I know you have goals and I know nobody's helping you, so I want to help you get there. And they're like, we just want advocacy. We just want protected. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it and come home every day and not be burned out. So I was like, I talked to my therapist and I said, what do I do? I said, well, when was the last time you were happy? Well, in between biology and nursing school, I was working for a retail mom and pop shop refilling inkjets. On my own schedule, I was servicing all the Giant Eagle or a lot of the regional Giant Eagle locations, and I knew the owner. And it was like, choose your own adventure, you made your own schedule, you knew what you needed to get done for the week, and you just did it. And it was great. He's like, well, why don't you start your own business? So I did. So I left nursing in October 2022, did a couple consultations and work in gardens that year. And then by the next year, I was taking on new clients and it's never stopped. I went to Chanticleer for a month to do an internship before the 2023 season started, and I don't think I've stopped since. It's been incredible to be in the Pittsburgh community as a small business owner and have the support that I do and the community around me that I do and the clients that I have. Like, it's absolutely fantastic. And then circling back with AHN, they messaged me when I was at Chanticleer to see if I could help them get these gardens off the ground because they had gotten a big grant from PNC. So when I was a nurse at West Penn, actually even before that, when I had my apartment in Lawrenceville, I would sell seedlings out of there because when you grow tomatoes, you grow 12 different varieties or 28 different varieties of tomatoes, you don't just start 2 seeds and say, I just start 1 seed or 2 seeds for what I need. You start 20 of them. And I was like, well, what the hell?
They might not germinate.
Yeah, they might not germinate. And lo and
Just
behold, all
there.
20 or 19 germinate. And I'm like, well, what the hell am I going to do with these life forms that I created? I need to find homes. So to give them to friends, or I would put them online under Facebook or Instagram or whatever we were trying to promote them, or Nextdoor, and say, hey, these are donation based. And I would take the donations and I would cover my soil costs or whatever it was. And then I would give the rest of the money to Grow Pittsburgh. Well, when the hospital started their healthy food centers, which if you go to an AHN facility and you are self-proclaimed to be food insecure, you don't have access to healthy foods, or you have mobility issues, or you have somebody that you live in that's sick or needs extra nutrition, you're a breastfeeding mother or expecting mother or whatever, you can get basically a prescription to go over the food center. It's a checkbox. It's on your intake forms, on your EPIC chart. It's like a checkbox, and it will give you the opportunity to go over to the food centers, where the staff there's usually a nutritionist and a dietitian at each location. And then they also partner with the community food banks in the area. In West Penn, they partner with the Bloomfield Community Food Bank. Also, the farmers market will donate food that's been there, and it goes into that channel as well.
The fresh food, yeah.
Yeah, the fresh food. So you have access to fresh, sometimes farmer food, as well as canned goods and healthy foods. It's not like Doritos and Pepsi and things like that. They curtail what is accessible to the patients. And I said, well, this is fantastic. Like, I think this was like 2017, something like that. I was like, this is great. I saw this on my internal newsletter that this was happening, and I immediately sent a message out of can we do a food garden? Can we do this? And it took me a month or 2 to get in contact with somebody in a face-to-face. And lo and behold, AGH was kind of already doing it. They have a couple raised beds on top of the Sandusky garage. And I talked to them. I talked to the suburban campus up in Bellevue, Avalon area. And they were doing an incubator at the time, and they wanted to do a farm program there. So there was no funding. There was no avenue to do this. I said, well, hell, I grow seedlings every year. I'm going to take this seedling money and create a garden at West Penn. And I sat down with Dr. Brian Johnson, and I was like, hey, can I take some of the campus space and create this food garden? And I'm like, sure, what the hell? The food center was like, yeah, do whatever. I'm like, wait, you can just take a tomato off of a thing and essentially hand it to a patient? We're not taught this in a medical building. But here, lo and behold, we had this avenue to do this. I said, well, hell, I'm going to do this. So I started it in 2018, I believe. The food center staff helped me plant it, and it was basically just me and them. They would occasionally come out and harvest it because they were stressed, they were short-staffed, and they had high turnover. So it was basically me going out and harvesting and tidying it after work when I was tired as hell. I was an MHO at the operations job at the time. And it was just
Good to get your hands in the dirt, though.
Yeah, it was a small space.
Even though
It was
asleep.
200 or 300 square feet in the shade, underneath the ginkgo and sycamore trees. It was okay, not ideal, but it was a proof of concept. We did that for 2 or 3 years, and then I left the facility. And then one of the contacts that I still had reached out to me when I was at Chanticleer and said, hey, can you help us with this? Our previous contact didn't work out. I was like, absolutely, I've been begging to do this for 5 years now. Of course I can help you do this. And they had gotten a grant from PNC to actually do it proper. It's okay, well, here's the spaces. AHN Forbes wants to do a garden. AVH might want to do a garden when they set up their food center. We have the one at West Penn already. AGH is doing one already, and then maybe Jefferson. I was like, oh, so you want to do multiple campuses? And they're like, yeah, and St. Vincent's has their own garden up there. They have a master gardener, and somebody's already getting that off the ground. I was like, wait, I was pinching myself. It's like, wait, you're actually incorporating food into a hospital setting or like a medical facility? And I was like, I absolutely want to be a part of this. I mean, at one point in time, I think they were expecting me to like cut my internship short as Chanticleer and come and help them because they were chomping at the bit. And when you're growing food, like the beginning of May is already too late, like to get a garden started and think about planting. Like in Pittsburgh, we can plant, Mother's Day weekend, but really you can sneak a lot of things in April. So I came home and basically hit the ground running. We started the Forbes garden, which I think we planted in June of 2023, so last year. So that garden is in its first full year. And then this year I installed a garden at AVH in West Penn and planted the Jefferson Hospital garden that we did last fall. So it's been a lot of installations and food gardens and teaching the staff how to manage these spaces and getting them up and running has been a real labor of love.
So it's managed by staff.
So the way the gardens work is I take lawn essentially, or like an urban space, because they're all on hospital campuses except for the one at Forbes. It's an old church that the hospital absorbed. That is like across the street. It's not even connected to the campus. But they're urban spaces for comparison. So you basically start out by covering it up with paper or cardboard, and then I usually just put 3 inches, 4 inches of compost right on top of that, and you can plant into it that day. And the nice thing with AgriCycle is there's no weed seeds. So you can plant right into it right away, and there's really no weeds the first 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Really the only weeds that are there are the ones you put there. So when your tomatoes fall off and rot, you're going to have volunteer tomatoes the next year. When you plant toothache plant and it goes to seed and creates thousands of babies, you're going to have toothache plant. And you're like, well, I planted this. I'm never going to have to plant it again. Same thing with ground cherries.
The volunteers
are the best, but like in a food garden, you have staff that don't know what the hell a toothache plant looks like or a ground cherry looks like. And they're like, are these weeds? I'm like, yes and no. Like, yes, the calendula that has gone feral is a weed, but when it comes up in a spot you like it, keep it. Otherwise, hoe it out or pull it out. So that's how the gardens are set up. So there's not a whole lot of maintenance in the weeding or the tending of these spaces. Like if you were to take a community garden and just start planting into the soil, I try and keep them neat and tidy so that they're set up from the start to be low maintenance. And then what the staff are expected to do is kind of tie up the peppers. When the peppers grow and they start snapping off limbs, to tie them to the bamboo. To keep the tomatoes tied up to the trellises, which are usually they're all done by cattle panels. So I get 16-foot cattle panels, tie up 7 tomato plants on those, and they just keep going and like kind of a spalier thing all summer.
That's a great idea.
Which has great airflow, really low disease pressure, and the fruit's like right there in your face. It's really easy to harvest from. It looks great from a mile away. So like doing publications and things like that with AHN looks fantastic. Meg from Seed to Fork was the person who like showed me how to do that. So I've been doing that for years now from her recommendation, and it works really well in these hospital settings and in my client settings too. So that's basically the maintenance, is like tying up the tomatoes, tying up the peppers, keeping up on the random weeds, and harvesting. And that's what the staff end up doing, which ends up me being, I'll go around to the locations usually every 3 weeks and do whatever the staff are unable to do, like tying up the tomatoes and pulling out the random weeds. And that's how those gardens are maintained.
Where does the harvest go?
So the harvests go from the gardens directly to the food centers. So they go into each food center location at least has a cooler and a dry storage area. So depending on what crop they're pulling out, pretty much everything goes into the cooler to keep it from spoiling. Sometimes the patients will go out and harvest it, where like if you're harvesting herbs, sometimes the patients will want to go out and pick their own basil or oregano or thyme and things like that, because if you leave those sitting around, they become dried herbs pretty quickly. And that's a rarity. Like a lot of patients are just there. They don't have time. When you're working with patients that have people, a population of people that don't have a secure way to have healthy foods, a lot of times the last thing that they are worried about is going out and doing extra. So they're not necessarily looking to like have prepared foods and take it away. They're given the resources to say, here's the tomatoes, here's the eggplants, here's the peppers, here's the herbs. And then the staff at the food centers will say, they're a dietitian or a nutritionist, here's a recipe, here's how you do this, here's how you process this based on what you have in front of you, or they'll curtail the recipes to what is available, or give them suggestions and point them in the right direction. So they're literally harvesting the food products on space and handing it to somebody with the direction of what to do with it. They're really, in my opinion, doing a really good job at closing the gap on food insecurity and saying, like, here's what you do with this, apart from like what 412 Food Rescue does in their kitchens, which is, here's a prepared food, walk away with a prepared food that you can just heat up at home. But what is happening is people are engaging with the gardens now too, and they're curious of like, what are you doing? I've been seeing this growing. I want to go out and harvest my own things. There are rehab patients at AVH that are wheeled out to the garden every day to kind of brighten their day, and you can see like these patients that presumably had a stroke or had a developmental disability or had cancer, and they're rehabbing and they light up, or they have dementia, and the staff know they were a gardener and they go out there and they light up. It's like becoming these therapy gardens.
God, that's huge. That's huge. The things that we don't anticipate when we know certain reasons we should put in gardens, certain reasons we should have these spaces in these places, but there's the unforeseen benefits that are just
there's really an
important.
infinite possibility on the facets that we could engage with these spaces. There was talk about doing like different therapy gardens or healing gardens, or having these spaces become more of a gathering space to do counseling or mental health therapy type things. And I'm trying to design the spaces because they're not just food gardens. The garden at West Penn is about 2,600 square feet in its footprint, and I think probably about, let's say 1,800 of that is dedicated to food. The other 600 or 800 square feet is devoted to herbs and perennials. So I'm installing pollinator gardens in all of these spaces too, which if you're not into vegetables and don't like the aesthetics of like what tomato plants look like hanging off of a cattle panel, or peppers, which I think they're gorgeous, there's also all these beautiful perennial flowers, which at Forbes is the oldest garden I have now. It looks absolutely outstanding. Like the cardinal flower there, the Joe Pye weed, the rattlesnake master that I snuck in there. These wild, weedy looking plants are just absolutely gorgeous, and they have all these textures and colors and smells that I can only imagine what you could do with in a medical setting, of engaging people with the smells and textures and colors of plants in bloom with the smells and textures and colors of food gardening. There's really infinite possibilities.
I think it's really cool that you've kind of opened the door, and actually it sounds like you kind of planted the seed, literally and figuratively when you worked at West Penn, that they're thinking more about their entire campus now and utilizing this green space. We thought a green lawn would be nice for people to look out their window at, but no, there's more interactive stuff that can happen. That's just wonderful.
Right.
You must be
it's
so excited about this.
I have a hard time talking about it without getting choked up, but I think the transformation has happened with me and with the activities that I'm doing, because it was me being a caregiver, that curious caregiver of I can volunteer, I can become a nurse, and being no, but how do I actually help people? What is the basis of all of this? And it's food, it's our nutrition, it's what we engage in, it's the earth. The two are one and the same. You can't just give somebody a tomato and not give them the understanding that this, where we live and work, and the thing that we're all gravitationally affixed to, that is this living, growing being, and we aren't disconnected from it. We are a part of it. You can't just take the tomato and the human out of it. You have to tie people back into it.
Yeah.
And that is what I try to do with all of my work, is teach people the stewardship and the engagement with how to take care of the earth, whether it's their lawn or their vegetable garden or a hospital food garden, and engaging with all of those activities. And I think I've evolved along with it, where it's okay, how do I put somebody back together in a trauma ICU versus how do I keep somebody from potentially getting cancer, or how do I improve their mental health, or how the hell do I help them put food on their table when they're a single parent, or they have a stressful lifestyle because they're working 3 jobs and they don't have the time to put food on the table, or they don't have the income to put healthy food on the table. It's incredibly rewarding when I sit down and sit with it. incredible what like they're doing and like how this has come full circle. And it's really exciting. Like AHN is actually starting to put themselves out there a little bit more with what they want to do in their spaces. Like Joe Deming just said I just got an email from her saying like we're going to be on the urban farm tour this year. So AHN was like, yeah, this is great. I'm like, wait, you're going to allow the public into this hospital space to engage with the gardens that we're doing? They're like, yeah, sure. They put signage up to like express what these spaces are doing. And like I submitted a proposal for PASA to talk about what they're doing, because when I was there last year, I went to a couple proposals around the medical community, and there's so many disconnects of it's not funded, we don't have the space, we don't have land security, we don't have the patient population, we don't have a dietitian, we don't have a nutritionist. Ding, 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 AHN is doing it all. And it's like, I'm not trying to say that they're doing everything perfectly and there's not room for improvement or to toot their own horn, but like they're tying a lot of the funding avenues and the accessibility of land to the patients and giving them the resources they need, which I read about and I'm like, wow, this is so cool to be at the hub of this.
Yeah, you've made those connections and connected people and institutions to this idea, and that's freaking huge. Congratulations. It's awesome.
Thanks.
There's such a disconnect in the world, and my husband and I talk about it all the time, because it's, if we were more in touch with the natural world, people would like have such a different perspective on things. And it's hard to summarize in in an interview of any sort, but like there's just so like the little things to just stop and be able to notice, a bug or the bees or whatever. Like it brings you to a different place in your brain. And especially right now with this crazy political climate we have, it's real necessary.
It's
to
nice
connect
to
back
ground,
to.
yeah.
Mm-hmm, yeah. Congratulations. I'm so impressed with what you've done.
It's like really come full circle for me though, because a client of mine that I met, I think she engaged with me through a presentation I was doing with Wild Ones, which is like most people have heard of the Audubon Society. They're basically a big proponent of ecological or habitats or certifications for birds. Wild Ones is that for native plants. So they're an organization that is nationwide that tries to engage people and create community around installing native plant gardens and lawn to prairie conversions and things like that. You name it, if it has native plants, they're an advocate for it. So I'm on their board and involved with the Pittsburgh or the Western PA chapter, and I did a presentation of turning your lawn to habitat, essentially. I don't remember the moniker for the presentation, but it got a lot of hits. It got a lot of people engaging with me through that, and it was awesome. Like the business side of it apart, the community around people that are interested in doing that is incredible. And it's a lot of either first-time home buyers or home buyers that are like, okay, this space was neglected for half a decade or a decade. How do I fix it? I'm tired of maintaining it. Or there are usually people that are like, okay, my kids are at a stable spot, or like they're 6, 8 and they're like stable. They're not like full intense like toddlers, and like they're a little bit more autonomous. Or there are people that are like, okay, my kids are gone and I have this big house and this big yard. Let's turn it into something different, or I want a garden, or I want to engage with these spaces. So anyway, she found me through this presentation. She said, oh my God, can you come and do this in my yard? And I was like, sure, okay. And they have a big space, like a suburban yard in the East Hills of Pittsburgh. And I was like, okay, well, how much do you want to take on? And they're like, well, do as much as you want. And I was like, wait, what? So like we took over their entire like area that was already kind of mulched, and we're bringing it out and doing like soft landings and native plantings underneath their trees, so they have like a picnic area that they can entertain their friends. And then they have like the slope backyard, and it goes down to a fire pit. And they were like, well, what do we do with the slope? We're tired of mowing the slope. Pittsburgh, go figure.
Yeah.
Like the same thing we're doing to everything else, mulch it and plant natives and let it go crazy. Are you okay with that aesthetic? They're like, sure. And they're like, what about this lawn over here? We're tired of our rain just washing down the hill. Well, let's make a rain garden and incorporate that. And they kind of were like, yes, let's do it all. And so we did. And they want me to do more in the future, and they're engaging with their space even more. And she told me, she's, I'm engaging with my husband more. She's like, I was never a gardener. Like, he was always the person that was outside doing things. She's like, I'm outside every day watering the plants, engaging the plants, tucking them back in if a squirrel pulls out a plug or, disturbs a plant or something. She's like, I'm engaging with the natural world more than I ever have. And I have a better relationship with my husband because we're outside doing these things. I feel so much healthier. She's like, maybe I've lost weight or I feel healthy. She's a healthy, active person anyway. She's like, I'm engaging in this natural world in a way that I've never done. And she's her kids are raised, so she's not, this isn't her first foray into the natural world, but it's the first time maybe she's engaging with it. I'm like, wow, I affected her well-being, her activity outside, and her relationship with her family. Like, shit. Like, I wasn't trying to do that. Just trying to create habitat
all
in
these
their wild
unforeseen
spaces.
consequences, you can use them to be like, oh, hey, are you having trouble in your marriage? Let me build you a garden that you can work together.
And instead of spending extra time mowing and weed whacking around all the fringe spaces that we took over, her husband's now hacking down the invasive honeysuckle on their slope, and we're going to do a native planting of trees and shrubs so that they have, more to engage with on the human element, because I'm going to plant some interesting stuff that's going to bloom and have different colors and textures other than honeysuckle, but also to attract birds and a lot of, critters that are using this space too, because that's what these spaces were. They weren't just invasive honeysuckle for the deer to bed underneath. There are a lot of bird species that they attract to their feeders. Maybe we can get them to stay and build a nest and engage with them. She's like, oh my God, I'm seeing all these different insects and birds and things already, and the plants haven't even grown. They haven't bloomed. They haven't done anything yet. I'm so excited to see what happens next year when they kind of start reaching maturity. Yeah,
I think it's partly because, maybe you cleared some things out, but also because she's paying attention more.
Mm-hmm. She's engaged.
You were just talking about honeysuckle and, the non-native plants. How do you deal with the non-native plants that are just kind of still cool or pretty, or honeysuckle is a really good smelling plant and you can eat it too. But yeah, how do you reckon with that?
So the way that I kind of approach that answer is multifaceted. So a native plant is usually defined as something that is historically in that space prior to human influence.
Okay.
And that definition or explanation is also very presumptuous, because humans were influencing the Americas long before Europeans were here. Tens of thousands of years before Europeans were here. Homo sapiens, humans, the inhabitants and civilizations that were here before Europeans came, were manipulating plants and moving them around and selecting for them.
My favorite is the tomato. Can you imagine any Italian food without tomatoes?
Except 400 years ago.
Yeah.
This is an Andean plant. This is a nightshade plant, which is from the Americas. It didn't exist over there. Neither did a lot of pepper species. Neither did a lot of squash. Neither did a lot of, I don't know if eggplant is in that or not, but can you imagine the fusion?
What did Italians eat? Seriously,
Right.
What did Italians eat 400 years ago? I have no idea.
But even you think about brassicas, you think of broccoli, cauliflower, kale, Brussels sprouts, even things like radishes. A lot of those were selected from the same host plant, and humans have been doing that for eons, since we were eating from the land, which is forever. So the idea of a native plant in its modern idea, that is the definition. But really what I'm talking about is that facet, which is remnant prairies and plantings and things like that I'm using in somebody's home landscape to say, okay, well, I'm going to plant purple coneflower because it is native to our region, versus purple loosestrife, which is, I believe, a European introduced species, which is now running rampant. It is considered an invasive plant because it is not only not native or a plant that historically has been in the Americas, it is now a plant that is over-asserting itself, let's say. So it gets into a space, it sets thousands of seeds, and it travels along waterways and pops up wherever it wants. Sort of like what Japanese knotweed did, except who introduced that? Humans did. It didn't come over on its own. We introduced it in a botanical way because it was beautiful. And then also the Army Corps of Engineers, I believe, used it to stabilize hillsides. Guess what it's doing all over our bare hillsides in Pittsburgh? It's stabilizing those hillsides very, very well, to the point where it is now crowding out other things that would be maybe occupying those spaces. So that is kind of my definition, or like how I consider invasiveness of a plant. You can have a native plant that is invasive, but is it an exotic invasive or is it a native invasive? It depends on how much room you give it. So what I try to select out, and the example that you gave with the invasive honeysuckle, it is not from the Americas. It is not one of our native honeysuckle species. It is an exotic from another area. And it is invasive in the way that it will absolutely crowd out all of the other species, to the point where everything in between my client's space and their fire pit, which is maybe 300 feet, is all honeysuckle. It's honeysuckle and locust. Locust is a native tree, and it's a pioneer species because the hillsides were very exposed, and I assume they popped up after the subdivision was developed in the 70s or 80s. But the honeysuckle has been existing in that space and crowding out everything else, except for 2 spice bush, which were eking it out, and they were growing at the base of 2 of the honeysuckles, and were getting nipped at by the deer. So I put a cage around them and allowing those to kind of come to fruition and hopefully reproduce and repopulate. Your question of like, okay, they smell good, they taste good, but what is the ecological benefit? There aren't very many species that are native to our area that have a relationship with these plants. So a bird will come out, eat the fruit off of these honeysuckle. It's not nutritionally valuable to them, and then they poop it out in another area, and then you have another honeysuckle. And this has been happening for 100 years, if not more now in our region. So this is why you have honeysuckle everywhere, because the birds aren't getting any nutrition from it, and they poop out the seeds somewhere else, and you have a new plant, and it travels rampantly. And it doesn't have a whole lot of insect hosts either. There's not even opportunistic insect hosts that come to these spaces, where like when you have other species, like people will say butterfly bush, which is another exotic species. Oh, well, it is a beneficial plant for pollinators. Yes, pollinators will come and get nectar from it, but they're not setting up shop there. They're not making home there. They're not engaging with it in a way that they use it as habitat or forage. Opportunistic species will come in and get the nectar from it, but the species that have evolved with it to cohabitate with it aren't present. So they're not an ecologically rich species, which is another kind of way to think about invasives. Is like, is it ecologically rich or is it adaptable? We've introduced species like plantain is something that is European, and it's everywhere. It's a weed in all the cracks in the sidewalk, and it's a very robust plant. It's also edible. Guess why it came over? Europeans probably brought it over because it was edible. And I think in Braiding Street Grass, Robin Wall Kimmerer writes and said that it was like, white man's foot, because everywhere white men went, it popped up because people were planting things like that. Same thing with a lot of edible weeds that we have in our area, and people are foraging these weeds. They're edible, they're great, they have a purpose for us, but they don't have a purpose for our other cohabitants on this earth or in our region. So that's where I kind of define what is invasive, exotic, or native, and then I kind of work with clients to figure out what their goals are.
Did you come to this business with all the plant knowledge, or how did you acquire that plant knowledge? And also thinking in terms of like, how did it get here and how did it propagate? Like all those those thinking patterns and how has that evolved in your life? Where did that all come from?
I mean, to be honest, like it really just boils down to like the modern thing of like fuck around and find out. Like it really is one of those things that like messing around with my neighbor's yard when I was growing up and being like, I was cutting their lawn when I was like 10 or 11 or 12, like, let's talk about child labor laws, but it was great. They took great care of me.
But you got paid though, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But that was your own business?
No, like I would go across the street and my neighbors Bob and Barb would be like, hey, can you come over and mow? Because we're sick of mowing. Actually, I think it was more to keep me occupied because I was a very high energy kid that didn't go outside very much at that era.
Where'd you grow up?
Erie, actually
Okay.
Harbor Creek on the east side of Erie. So I was over there mowing their lawn, and that was what Bob wanted me to do, so he didn't have to do it. And then Barb would come out and say, hey, what is going on with those flowers out there? Do you think you could move some of these around? What if I bought some stuff? Do you think you could plant it for me? And lo and behold, I was doing perennial gardening when I was like 12 years old. No idea what the hell I was doing, and being like, well, what if we put this over here? I see this growing in the woods. Can we take some? Like messing around when I was 12, 14 years old. And I was doing the same thing when I was 24, when I moved in with a friend in Brookline. I was 24, 26, whatever. And she's like, you want to start a food garden in the backyard? Just as long as you plant grass whenever you leave. And I was like, okay. So I did when I lived there for like 2 years. And then I planted mint alongside of her house because I got tired of weed whacking it. And when her and her husband were like out mowing, they'd send me a message. You son of a bitch, like I can still smell mint and you've been gone for 3 years. Like, so, just kind of messing around and figuring out, you said I have a scientific mind, trying to figure out what worked, like reading a book, asking somebody in the community, going to resources like Grow Pittsburgh or like Repair the World would have the farm crew kind of pop-ups where there was just a lot of knowledge sharing, discovering PASA, discovering the Penn State Master Gardeners or like Beechwood, Native Plant Nursery and like the whole Audubon Society. There's a lot of resources out there. You don't need to be professionally taught this. And it's not that inaccessible. Like if you have soil and space and an initiative and you know how to water something, you can keep something alive and probably harvest or enjoy something out of that space. So a lot of books, a lot of conferences, and a lot of public speaking and public engagement. When you get up on stage and you get off of that stage, people will come and correct you. People will come and connect you with other resources. People will say, where did you get this information? Here's more, or here's less, or you should meet this person. And that's how I was taught, which I try to encourage people to do the same. I'm not the type of person that says, you need to go to Larry Weiner because he's the, prime author that I've engaged with that does prairie gardening, or Benjamin Vaught, who is doing a counterpart in the Midwest of like, he's been doing a lot longer than I have of converting lawns to prairies, and he is in the Midwest. This is where the prairies were very much a landmark, where in Pennsylvania or in Western Pennsylvania we had pocket prairies. This wasn't necessarily a prairie-ridden landscape. So connecting people with resources of how to do it themselves. And sometimes I'm the person that people are reaching out to and figuring out how to do it themselves, which is awesome. Clients are like, wait, you want me to text you? You're okay with me emailing you? And I was like, yeah, hi, we're a community. Like, yes, I should be asking for money for this, but like, I also just am really happy you're enjoying the space, and it takes me 2 seconds to answer your text message of what is this insect? What is this plant? Should I pull this out? What should I do with this? Like, it's really cool. To kind of answer people's questions and engage with them and kind of set them on their own journey. Because somebody helped set me up. It wasn't like I paid for this education. It was more or less given to me through the community and the resources that are there. So anybody could do this.
What's next for you? What are you looking to do? What's the next level? What's the new thing that you're thinking of? And also, where can people find you and find your services and products?
So I think what's next for me is just continually engaging with people. Like, again, I'm self-taught. Like, a lot of the community organizations here are what got me here, and I want to keep giving back. Like, I am a for-profit business, but I like giving back to community gardens or to some of the nonprofits that helped get me here, like Tree Pittsburgh, Grow Pittsburgh, supporting some of the local growers, because the problem with native plants and the irony in native plantings is you can't really get them on scale to do a 700 or 1200 plant install locally. Like, it's impossible to get that many plants on a budget for an install at, a residential or commercial space even. Like, the budget increases tenfold if you were to get them at a gallon size versus a plug size. So I try to support the local businesses as much as possible and promote them, because it's not going to get any better unless we keep getting more people engaged with that. So just doubling down on the community here, trying to figure out different ways to engage and put this more in the public focus of engaging with, street renewal projects, engaging with businesses that have prominent locations, not for my own glorification of GaiaScape, but to say, hey, this is what a native plant landscape could look like. Because I don't know if you've read the news, like, we're kind of in an ecological decline here, so we're well past the point of action here. So the more front-facing we can all be in our community, I think the more people will engage with, and hopefully start returning some of these spaces from lawn to more of an ecological rich community, or engaging with it. Even if you want to grow food in a container on a fire escape, like, that's still a way for you to go out and engage with the community every day. So I want to keep doing things like that. I've been teaching classes at FIPS, so you can find me. We'll be doing the Urban Farm Tour September 14th with the AHN West Penn Food Garden, and then hopefully we'll be presenting at PASA with AHN and myself on what we're doing within AHN, and we'll have the whole data and the metrics. And they are actually, some of the residents did a research project to say how much does a head of broccoli cost at the supermarket, how many heads of broccoli or how many tomatoes did we produce, and actually figuring out the economic value of what we've offset, to say, okay, if you go out and get a pound of tomatoes, how much does it cost the supermarket versus what these gardens are producing? And it's astounding how much money they are giving away, or that these gardens are producing.
Yeah.
So doubling down on the research and the presenting, and again, engaging with the community and trying to educate and give back to people, as well as engaging with my homeowners and my residential clients, and trying to teach them how to be better stewards or meet them where they're at. I'm not going to walk into somebody's space that has a very standard landscape and say, you need to do everything different, and them not being receptive to that. You kind of have to meet people where they're at. And I really love doing that. It has yet to enrage me or take me in a negative direction. I've only had positive experiences from those types of things. It seems like we're almost evolved to be doing this, and when you tap somebody back into it, it almost only has positive feedback and feedback loops. So hopefully just more of that.
That's great.
And then ways for people to reach out to me. I have a website that just routes to Instagram. I haven't gotten the time or energy to build a website, nor have I needed to, in a way. Like, the Pittsburgh community has found me through Instagram, GaiaScape, and that's been great. It's a great way to engage with me, just sending a message or linking through the link tree and sending me like a form on there if you want to become a client. Again, like, my information is out there. It's not like I'm hidden. You can search for me on Google and say, like, oh, what is this business? My phone number, my email, and everything are all listed under Google.
Cool. So, well, thanks, Chris.
Yeah, thanks
for talking with me. And I'm so glad to have learned more about you and learned more about your evolution. It's been great.
Thanks. It's nice to connect with you, and I'm really excited you took the time to sit down with me, and your project has been really cool to hear about all the other things going on in our community too. So thanks.
Everyone knows that food is cool. No secret. Eat that food with a bowl and spoon. Everyone knows that food is cool. No secret. Eat that food with a bowl and spoon.
With Bowl and Spoon is written, produced and hosted by Shelley Danko Day. Original theme song was written and performed by Paul LeBreeze and friends. You can listen to With Bowl and Spoon wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe, like, review and share. Follow us and send us questions or messages on Facebook and Instagram at With Bowl and Spoon. Thanks for listening.